Tomorrow at the time of 2 o'clock, we will be getting an update. Are we going to be keeping interest rates the same? Are we going to be cutting interest rates? And the future outlook on what Jerome Powell is going to be stating. We can already see here that Powell says central bank is in no hurry to cut rates again. A lot of people ask me this question. They say, Deck, do you think tomorrow at 2 o'clock the market's going to dump and fall and fade? And I'm going to say, why do you think that? And you say, well, because tomorrow there's a great chance that we're not going to cut interest rates. Since we're not cutting interest rates, people are going to say, oh man, this is awful. We're staying higher interest rates. Inflation hasn't fallen on down. We're still getting worried with tariffs and the market's going to go even lower. I disagree with that. The reason why I disagree with this is because we already know this. We already know the answer that Jerome Powell isn't going to be cutting interest rates. So it's already priced in. The fact that the S&P 500 has been fading and falling and dropping, and last week we had our worst week in the last 3 years on the SPY. We fell into correction territory, dipped out of it so far, but we're still down about 8% from our highs. We already had this drop already happen. There is no one in the world right now thinks that we are going to cut interest rates tomorrow. So while it is bad news, we're already prepared for the bad news. Remember, stocks and the entire stock market moves abruptly from surprises. Surprises on the good side, surprises on the bad side. Like for instance, if Jerome Powell walks on out tomorrow and says, you know what, we are going to cut interest rates, this market would explode all the way back on up because it's something that we just weren't expecting. Let's imagine this. Imagine if you were 9 years old right here and you are saying, oh man, you know what? I'm not doing anything this weekend. My mom and dad are working. I guess I'll just stay at home and kick rocks and play with my imaginary friends. But imagine all of a sudden your dad shows up and says, hey, little Timmy, I took off this weekend. You want to go to Disneyland? You were not expecting that. And again, even though you were a little bit down before, now you're at euphoria. You just went, I had no idea this was about to happen, right? Now imagine the complete opposite. Imagine if your dad said, we're going to Disneyland, and you were happy, and then he says, hey, you know what? I'm sorry. I got to work this weekend. And all of a sudden you start going right down in the gutter, right? When you have a few days to prepare of saying, oh, I'm not going to Disneyland anymore, it's not as of a dramatic drop because we know it's already going to happen. If we know we are going to Disneyland, guess what? We are going to be a little bit more excited, but it's going to be that more surprise that leads to emotion in the stock market. Same exact thing with the S&P 500. The S&P 500, you can think about it as the top 500 companies in the United States, or you can honestly think about it as how, again, investors, Wall Street, the average person, the consumer, their emotion in the current economy. That's all we have right here if you want to change the chart in your mind. The chart right now in your mind is the emotion in the economy. Now, the emotion in the economy, what do we see? The emotion's good, confident, happy, I'm loving life, everything's great, everything's moving on up. AI, love it. Rockets, love it. Again, quantum computing, love it. AI data centers, love it. But over the last month and a half, guess what? People have not been loving it. Over the last month and a half, people are scared to see what's going to happen next. People are nervous on what's going to happen next. People don't know what's going to happen with interest rates. People don't know what's going to happen with inflation. People don't know what's going to be happening coming up with tariffs. People don't know if we're going to fall into a recession. People are nervous over the last 2 years of extremely high over-evaluations. People don't know. And uncertainty leads to fear. And fear leads to cautiousness. And cautiousness leads to less buyers. And less buyers leads to more sellers. And more sellers lead to fading and falling. So that's what we need to get right here. So tomorrow, at the time of 2 o'clock, we are going to have Jerome Powell walk on out. And there is no shock. There is no surprise that, again, during tomorrow, people are going to be saying, hey, the FOMC at 2 o'clock is going to be stating that we are going to be having the same interest rates that we have. We are widely anticipated to maintain the federal Fed rates at 4.2 to 4.5%. The big thing that we want to be looking for is what is this man going to be stating 30 minutes later? 30 minutes later at 2:30 is what we don't know. And what we don't know will come as a new surprise for us. For instance, we're going to be listening to Jerome Powell's tone. Is he hawkish? Is he dovish? Is he going to be stating, hey guys, just to let you guys know, we are not cutting interest rates this entire year? Imagine if he says that. Hey, it's like we already can understand that right now we're not cutting rates, but all of a sudden you say we're not cutting rates the rest of the year, market's going to fall and dump. If he says, hey guys, just a heads up, inflation is coming down to our 2% goal, we're most likely going to be cutting rates, before summer. We could see the market actually spike on up tomorrow. So it's more not what comes out at 2 o'clock. It's going to be more what comes out at 2:30. His future remarks. How can we again get prepared for the future? Remember, we're 9 years old and our dad or our mom coming up to us and saying, hey, little Timmy, we're going to Disneyland in June. Even though that's in June, I can be excited. I can be happy. I can be again fired on up. If my mom and dad says, little Timmy, you're 9 years old, grow up, get a job, we're never going to Disneyland again, you little asshole. Then you say, whoa. And it's like, never again, Peter Pan, help me, right? I don't know. So, but like, it's more about what he says for those future remarks.